Alright, it's been a long time since I've made a video, so hopefully you haven't waited too long. I've actually come back to Oloro for a very specific reason, and that reason is Aetherflux Reservoir, which I'm going to bring up now. I'm sure if you're a standard player, I would imagine this card is making some kind of an impact. Seems like an ideal control card in the sense that it's a defensive card that ends the game on the spot under the right conditions. That's a perfect card for control since it's always good when your defense is also your offense. But in a 40 life format with Oloro, it's particularly strong. So I've made a number of changes to Oloro, or at least I think it is. First of all, I've also incorporated a new card called Inventor's Fair. It seems really good for fetching Aetherflux Reservoir and empowering it as well. Of course, it can fetch other things, and in this deck, there are plenty of targets. So I'll go ahead and scroll down so you can kind of scan the mana base, the Oloro mana base there. So one notable change, and this is probably not going to be a long-term change, but I don't know at present how to undo it, is I took Dark Confidant out of the deck. So I took it out of the deck because I've already got Necro, I've got Dark Tutelage. It's either Confidant or Tutelage, or both, but there's a point where you end up with just too many card drawing cards, and so it's a matter of which ones do I want to be using. Nice thing about tutelage, of course, is that it works through humility. In Zur, I definitely would like to be playing Dark Confidant because in that case, Dark Confidant draws fire away from Zur early, potentially clearing the way for Zur just by being a target. So different thoughts on that. I also have included Transmute Artifact in here, a card that I haven't used in a long time. And I still have, although I don't have Reliquary Tower, I had to make room for the Inventor's Fair somehow. I do still have Thought Vessel in the deck, so that I can potentially just do the gigantic Necro Thought Vessel thing. So, well, let's just see how some games go. It's pretty enjoyable, this new card here, and I believe it's right around here where I started playing with this version of Oloro. So we'll see how games play. Hopefully we won't have too many bugged games, but I'll play through as many as I can. So my opponent's playing Isle, Eternal Pilgrim. Anyway, I do a first turn Ponder and I put Transmute Artifact into my hand. Now, the first couple games here are particularly clunky. I've been rusty because I haven't been playing for a while, frankly. On turn 2 there, I should have played Talisman and then used Talisman to cast Mana Vault. And because I didn't, it sets me back a couple of turns. Luckily, my deck doesn't care too much, and then my opponent's doing that stupid thing that I've seen people do where he's tapping out for no reason at all. It allows me to ramp into a Tezzeret, untap some mana sources, rift his commander back to his hand, orb him down. I've got Transmute Artifact in hand, so now with Tezzeret, I go ahead and transmute away a Mana Vault using Tezzeret to get a Soul Ring to power up the pay the cost. I go ahead and get Aetherflux, and then I start playing little games. I'm trying to figure out exactly in this game. This is literally like the first game, I think, with this card in it, where I'm trying to figure out exactly the best way to get it to trigger and just end the game. And you'll see I get a lot smarter and more efficient later. But I was trying to do some kind of shenanigans with top, and it just doesn't work great for me here. Ultimately, it doesn't much matter, and I nail my opponent with a Aetherflux Reservoir activation, and the game is just immediately over. Got a Necro? Don't need to play it. Not when you can do 50 to your opponent. Alright, so I think some of these games, excuse me, some of these games here won't necessarily be, I think some of these are skippers. Okay, so I've got a Savage hand, obviously, against Thraximunder. Commander I haven't seen in a while. I bring it up zoomed so that if you happen to be watching this on your phone, you could possibly pause it and take a look at what I'm facing if you're not familiar with it. But so I've got a pretty mad start, and I'll pause it here for a second. This is also like my unfamiliarity with the deck. What I could have done with Trinket Mage, I used Trinket to get Crypt to kind of ramp up faster, but had I wanted to, And maybe in hindsight it would have been better. I don't know. But I could have fetched map. And then map will actually fetch that land that gives you a life every upkeep and has, if you have metalcraft, and fetches the an artifact. So I could have used. So I now have a new thing that I realized later, where Trinket Mage can actually demonic tutor for any artifact in my deck if I chain him through the land. If I go Trinket Mage, map into the land, sack the land, go get an artifact. And while that's a bit of a long chain, when you're flush on mana, it's pretty reasonably doable. And obviously, if the card you're getting just wins the game, it's probably worth it. Anyway, I didn't. I got Mana Crypt, and Mana Crypt certainly has won a few games. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And unfortunately, I draw a Scroll Rack, which goes really nicely with, and decide not to play a land for the turn. I rack it back and find a Vampiric Tutor. So I vamp, and then because I don't have 50 life yet, and I'm still a little sketchy on how well that, or how quickly I can get there, I decided to get Well of Lost Dreams. So Well is certainly an excellent win condition as well. No pun intended. So I fetch Well, and now I'm drawing 3 cards per turn with a Thought Vessel in play. Probably not great for my opponent. Um, and if I recall correctly, I think this is about where the game bugs out. But I think you get the drift on how this game plays out. I actually get Tax Rack going with Well, and I'm drawing 6 or 7 cards per turn. Uh, Pretty safe to say my opponent loses that one. And then I think this one against Lowman here is a game where my opponent just doesn't play. He just turn 1 concedes to Island or something. All right, so I have a couple like that in here. I try to skip them, but anyway. So here I'm playing against PDT 1060, and he's playing Sasaya Oroki Ascendant. Now, if you think about how if you've been watching the channel and you're familiar with Oloro and you've seen how previous games have played out, you know that the deck tends to win, but often it takes quite a while to win the games that it does win, unless the opponent just quits early. But look at this game here. This game is not. So I have an Inventor's Fair, a Thran, and a Talisman. So 1 more artifact and I'll be gaining an extra life per turn, or I can just tutor up my win con and slam it. While I'm waiting to hit 50 life, though, it'll feed me life to get there potentially. So I'm pretty excited about this card. Anyhow, I top deck Fabricate. So with Fabricate and Aetherflux, boom. Mishra's Workshop, I go ahead and get Flux down. So what turn is this? It's really hard to tell because of the guy's touch, throwing off how many lands he can play and the fact that I've missed land drops, but I think we're moving into. Okay, so this is turn 5. Turn 5. This is not typical speed for Oloro, but 2 + 1 is 51, and that's it. My opponent dies. Turn 5 kill in Oloro. Pretty savage. Pretty savage card. So anyway, move on to the next one. That was really satisfying. Also, just enjoying the heck out of. That's not an unusual speed for Zur to get the scoop that early, but usually, of course, with Zur, it's a concession. But to actually make the kill and to do it in Oloro, that's pretty solid. So anyway, so this guy's playing Maelstrom Wanderer, and I ponder early and go ahead and just set myself up with some mana. I've got Inventor's Fair, so I kind of like want some artifact mana. He Sylvan Tutors for a Trinket Mage, so I'm kind of keeping an eye out for that. I go ahead and let him have a Signet. I might have should have condescended there. I don't know, but I figured I'd rather deal with the Trinket. I didn't want to condescend there and then turn out he has a land and then plays Trinket and goes and gets Soul Ring Crypt. So I'd rather just deal with this now. And I tuck both cards to the bottom and then realized that I might as well just Mystical Tutor in that case. And if the graphics look funky on my cards, it's because I don't know what's wrong with Magic Online, but something's wrong with my version. And this is what all my cards look like. It's actually pretty frustrating. So anyway, my opponent has 2 cards left, so I Mind Twist away a Reshape and an Acidic Slime out of his hand, which was really nice. Go ahead and dismiss this Trinket Mage now that we know about it. And because he's down to just the 1 card that he top decked, I go ahead and just tap out to get the Pristine and the Talisman out. The Pristine Talisman and the Talisman of Dominance. Drawing a bunch more mana, so I go ahead and just actually cast my commander and then immediately Pristine a card right into my hand. So I'm booking cards into my hand while pushing for that 50 life. And then he plays a bounce spell. He's got 1 card in hand, and I have Factor Fiction, so there's plus I can gain life with Pristine, so I don't necessarily need my commander in play or in the command zone to get up to 50. So I just chill out. Also, I don't have to win with the 50 life. It's just a really smooth way to do it. So I Factor Fiction. My opponent makes a single pile. I have no idea what he's doing. I take the single pile, and he immediately concedes. So I don't know if there's a misclick or what, but it was probably an unwinnable pile. Polluted Delta, Aetherflux, Vamp, Talisman, Force Wheel was the list of cards. If you'd have done something crazy like put Aetherflux in 1 pile and given me the other 4, then I could just Vampiric Tutor for Yawgmoth's Will. So it's not really a way for him to stop me at that point. So probably pretty fair for him to scoop. And that tends to happen when you Mind Twist people, even if it's only for 2. It shows the power of the Hymn to Torok effect. Unfortunately, this guy decided not to play me, and I had this hand that was just beautiful and was full of promise. So, moving on. Is Demas. Hopefully this is a good game. My opponent's playing, oh yeah, Sidri. I'll zoom in. Galvanic Genius. The notable thing about this is that he can turn artifacts into artifact creatures with power and toughness equal to their casting cost, their converted casting cost. So that means that the mana crypt in my head doesn't really have a long life expectancy, but he's got a Dispeller capsule anyway, so I decide that I'm just not super worried about it, and I have a window to Mind Twist him for 4, and I get Enlightened Tutor, Mana Crypt, double land source, and I'm very happy about that. So it was worth it. He activates his commander, of course, and turns my Mana Crypt into a creature. So next turn, I've got Swords of Plowshares and a Deprive, so I want to see if I was hoping he'd animate his Dispeller's Capsule and let me Swords of Plowshares the capsule, because then I would have just taken the 2 from his commander, but he does not, so I Swords his commander instead. And this way, if he has a land, I can basically lock his commander out of the game for the indefinite future here. I mean, he would need a cheaty card like in Ancient Tomb or something along those lines to get that commander back down. So with that in mind, I play the Prairie Stream tapped. He does not make a play. So I've got Future Sight, but I can't slam it because he's got Dispeller's Capsule. So I just play some Dun Go with him for a little while and just develop my mana base, figuring that I'm more likely to be able to set up a good turn since he's recovering from a Mind Twist and I'm not. So he goes for Transmute Artifact on his turn. And now the funny thing is, I'm going to pause it. So the funny thing about Transmute Artifact, it's kind of neat actually, is that unlike Tinker, Transmute Artifact, you don't sacrifice the artifact until the spell resolves. So if your opponent counters it, you don't lose the artifact. However, he only had 1 artifact in play, so in response I actually bounce his artifact in play. He can't sack it and I draw a card. He can't sack it in response because there's no target, so he can't fizzle my... He could target himself. He could target his own card if he really wanted to prevent me from drawing off the Cryptic. He decides to just let the card get bounced to his hand. But what this lets me do is then his Transmute tries to resolve. There's nothing for him to sacrifice, and the Transmute gets countered. The card's back in his hand, and I drew a card. And now I figure, okay, I'm just going to counter Dispeller's Capsule because I really want to get Future Sight out, and I'm giving up a forbid to do it, but it seems worth it. And then he plays Pithing Needle, naming Oloro, which is totally fine. It actually has no effect on Oloro because it's a triggered ability, not an activated ability, but I won't tell him that. And then I play Teferi into Future Sight, which is a pretty good turn with the Yawgmoth's Will on top. He exiles Teferi, leaving me Future Sight. Play I don't quite agree with, but it was his choice, and I go ahead and counterspell his Sun Titan off the top. My turn, I draw Demonic Tutor, and just like that, game over. Demonic Tutor, Aetherflux Reservoir, boom, take 50. I don't have to get control of this game, even though I'm a fair way along towards doing that. Totally unnecessary. As soon as I can tutor, you just instantly die. It's so ridiculously cool. So we had this long, drawn out slog, and then boop, tutor, dead, instant. Totally amazing. So this card makes the combination of Oloro and that card's existence makes playing control on control a lot easier for this deck. It's a lot scarier, I think, for the control decks, and may enable me to play more anti-aggro cards to keep my life total up and to do better against aggro. So I'm going to, be looking at that in the future. If I do face aggro decks a lot and it seems to be a problem, then I can start putting in cards like Moat, Toxic Deluge, or whatever. Even though Toxic Deluge costs life, it doesn't cost that much. Anyway, so I was setting up here. So against this guy here, Jones Darren, I get out Crucible, and then I'm able to Demonic Tutor, and he just quits. I assume he expected me to have gotten Strip Mine, but instead I actually got Mana Drain. So the reason I got Mana Drain here was that I was hoping my opponent would play, his commander was Horde of Nations. I was hoping he was going to play his commander next turn, because if I could drain it for 5, I was going to jump up to 48. If I could drain it for 5, then I could cast Fabricate into the well. So, I mean, not well, the new artifact, the Aetherflux. So I would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5 is 11 mana. So 3 for Fabricate. So the way I would have probably played it is something like Fabricate for the Aetherflux, Yawgmoth's Will into Demonic Tutor into Mana Crypt or Vault, and then drop the well. Somehow like tried to chain it together to immediately kill him. I don't know if it was possible for sure, if I could have actually killed him here. Alternately, I might have just willed Demonic Tutor, Mind Twisted away his hand, and then probably Fabricated and then just killed him with the static effect. So had he played his commander, I think that's probably the route I would have gone. But in response to the Demonic Tutor, he just quits. So no problem. So I'm playing Jokester, running the Gitrog Monster, and he starts off with a card that I have no respect for, and a nice slow start for him. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this game's pretty over. I don't have double blue here. Anyway, whoa, we'll slow it down a little bit. I don't have double blue here, but I was able to get out a lot of mana early. He kills my Worn Power Stone, but I get to keep my Scroll Rack, and I use Scroll Rack and set a Tezzeret on top and find myself a land tax and a second blue. So I go ahead and just play Dark Tutelage for now, thinking what I'll do is respond to the Scroll Rack, getting the Urborg, playing land tax here. And then so he gets the Gitrog Monster down, but I got Tax Rack going, so I get to go ahead and Tax Rack into Dark Tutelage so that I'm actually gaining life from Pristine and my commander and not taking any damage from the tutelage because I keep putting lands on top. And so now I've got Tezzeret. And remember, I had Tezzeret before. The whole plan was I only put him down temporarily. The plan here is Tezzeret gets fetches for 4. So right here, I go ahead and counter his Zendikar Resurgency and bounce his Gitrog Monster. Next turn, what's going to happen is I'll jump up to 51 using the Pristine Talisman to untap the Mana Vault and using Dark Tutelage to put a card back. So to put a land on top. So I'm going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. I'll pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, leaving an island untapped and the Mana Vault untapped. And I'll play a land, cast Tezzeret, I'll be at 51, activate him for 4, and then do 50 to my opponent. But fortunately, before Jokester, just having his Gitrog monster there apparently was too much for him, and he quits before I get a chance to do that. So anyway, this game I'm playing against a Lazav Damir Mastermind. Nothing too exciting on that. I do have an Inventor's Fair early, and I've got the ability to get Humility early with an Ancient Tomb, so that's really nice. And then I mess it up by playing an island instead of playing Scrubland. So I should have played Scrubland there. And then on the next turn I could slam Ancient Tomb if I need to, like if, for example, if he played Shadow Mage Infiltrator or something. But my opponent decides he just doesn't even want to play a Ancient Top Go game. He doesn't want to play against islands. Shoot, I don't know. Anyway, so Red Panda Mark, hopefully he plays this game out. I don't remember. That's the only problem with doing these. Nope, doesn't play it out after the fact. I'm pretty sure, however, that I had a decent game here against Scud Missile. So we'll run through this one. Scud Missile, playing Grimgrin, Corpseborn. So I don't really like the creature, but it does have the potential to do a lot of damage, commander damage. Anyway, my opponent gets an early. I got an early expedition map. My opponent gets Ponder, Brainstorm into Mana Crypt, Chromatic Lantern. So he's got insane amounts of mana. But unfortunately for him, expedition map with a Gilded Lotus in my hand means I've got insane amounts of mana on turn 3 as well. Gilded Lotus into Necropotence, and we're off. It was at this point Brian was watching, and he popped in and said, "Control deck meet Necropotence," and I had a chuckle. Anyway. I was respecting his deck pretty well, but he just cast Divination, so my respect went down a little bit there. Counter Squall, it's a little janky. It's good, but it's one of those cards that, I don't know, maybe in blue-black. I haven't tried to build a pure blue-black deck, so maybe Counter Squall belongs. But anyway, enough on that. So I play Winter Orb here, and Brian, who was watching, had said he didn't think that was necessarily the right play because I have Necro out, and you can just bury him in card advantage. So the reason I did it was only because I figure the longer the game goes, the better it is for me. And it does have a great, way of slowing the game down. Plus, I had a ton of removal for his mana sources. Anyway, finally, I dig into a Aether Flux, so I'm at 28, and you're going to see something pretty cool here. My opponent plays a creature. I could have countered it and gained a life, but I figured I'd be better off saving the mana. So I get hit with a Mana Crypt. So let's see. Beginning of the turn, I'm at 25. I cast Yawgmoth's Will into Soul Ring. 28. Map, 31. Preordain, I'm at 35. I Impulse and jump up to 40, find a Mana Vault, which is fantastic. Cast it off the one artifact mana that was left. I'm at 46. Go ahead and strip mine him because I felt like strip mining. Cast Vindicate, and with Vindicate on the stack, I don't even bother letting it resolve. I blast him for 50 points of damage. So I was at 25, and I jumped up 27 life this turn, and we're really not done. I could easily gain another big chunk of life here if I really wanted to, and had I played this correctly. So I did not play it actually correctly there, but I do in this game against Jplo Bido, who seemed like a cool dude, who said he'd check out the channel. So I will, if you're checking it out now, thanks for the game. This game is actually where I realized I could do something much better with the card. And you guys may already, know. Oh, let's check out his commander, by the way. So he plays first turn Opt. He's playing a blue-white legendary creature as his commander. Anyway, so the trick that I'm talking about is that the life gain effects go on the stack. They don't check to find out how much life you gain until after until they're ready to resolve, not when they go on the stack. So if you can add more things to the stack, the trigger will get higher and higher. So he plays anyway. I get an early necro. He plays mana vapors to slow me down, prevent me from wastelanding him. And then he uses the window of opportunity to play Council's Judgment. I figure out how many cards I probably am going to want off Necro and use that as an opportunity to go ahead and just pay some life in response to Council's Judgment because I know which card is going away, of course. Now I've got a ton of cards, and I'm still at 40 thanks to Oloro. Opponent plays Turnabout during my upkeep, so I wasteland in response, figuring no matter what he picks here is going to be the wrong answer, basically. Because I have Teferi, so I immediately untap my lands that he had wanted to lock down, use them to cast Dark Tutelage, and we're back to card drawing and mana production. Along with the extra life, I'm now getting 2 life per turn off Pristine Talisman, thanks to Teferi. And I had a little problem with I was trying to click 4 permanents, and somehow I only got 3 tapped before I activated Teferi. Not sure what it was, lag or what. So anyway, I teachings for a fact, I factor fiction, finding a demonic tutor. I go ahead and GT for Aetherflux Reservoir. I lose 4 life on a cryptic command. Just doesn't matter. Obviously, as you've seen, this deck can quickly take advantage of a reservoir. So I get reservoir down, play Metamorph with the triggered ability of Flux on the stack. I add a Remand targeting my own Metamorph. With that on the stack, I flashback Teachings. I go ahead and resolve the Teachings and then resolve the Remand and then resolve the trigger from Teachings, Remand, and the other thing. So what happens is that by the time the first one resolves, I've already cast like 4 or 5 spells, so I gain 5, 5, 5, and jump from whatever my life was in the 40s, I think, to 60 basically, or 59, and then I go ahead and just pay the 50 life to blast him to neg 10, which is just insane. So this deck is just utterly, I don't know. I don't know if this deck is as good as the other decks, but it's pretty scary how consistent you can just deal 50 and just don't even need. I mean, you can play all the normal control elements, but you can also just trash your opponent. And then lastly, I had this game against this guy playing Animar. He goes turn 2, Bloom, 10 dry mana, leak it, and he quits. I suppose I could have. I leak it planning to wasteland his green source actually, and then I've got counterspell up in case he draws another one, and force will in this. But it's not like I actually don't have a good hand if all the disruption doesn't stop him if he has plenty of mana. So I take this to mean that he didn't. But yeah, I could have easily lost this game actually if I'd have just drawn nothing here. So fortunately, he just scoops it up. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed those games. You could see I was getting a little better and better at the deck. I do think that, again, I do think that Dark Confidant belongs in here because it's just too good. I mean, just not playing it is just crazy. Like, it lets you mulligan more aggressively because it gives you another way to recover for very cheap. So, but at the same time, I do think Transmute belongs because in this deck, specifically in the Oloro deck, the ability of Transmute Artifact to fetch either the Reservoir and just instantly kill your opponent, or to fetch Crucible and lock them out combo with a Strip Mine, or to fetch Scroll Rack for tax, or to go get Well of Lost Dreams and just draw extra cards per turn. So you have, and then of course there's Metamorph and Lotus and stuff like that. So you have, particular to this deck, you've got Well of Lost Dreams, Aetherflux Reservoir, and Scroll Rack. And I think with all that going on, that Transmute does in fact belong in this version. So how to fit Dark Confidant in, I don't think that's the slot. I don't really know where to put it. I suppose it could be the Thought Vessels, since this, unlike Zur, I'm not consistently just trying to get Necro and then abuse the heck out of it. Like, that's not the focus of the deck, and if I do get Necro, I'm probably winning anyway, whether or not I draw 40. Whereas with Zur, you know you're going to get Necros, so having Thought Vessel, and also the fact that with Zur I use my win con is Ivory Tower. So Thought Vessel, because I attack, I fetch Necro, I immediately, with either Thought Vessel or Reliquary Tower, set up as quickly as possible and then draw a gigantic hand, slap down an Ivory Tower. And then once you're getting 30 life per turn, people just give up. But that's usually how I win. Possibly Zur could also use Aetherflux Reservoir as a either in conjunction with or instead of Ivory Tower, with the idea being that you draw a gigantic hand and then you just dump it and gain a ton of life and do 50 damage like that. But I don't know if that's sensible or if that's just win more or what. I kind of like the fact that Tower is so cheap and easy to generate the concession anyway. So at any rate, that's where we're at with this deck, and I do hope that you enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun playing with the new cards. It's very cool that they keep printing cards that can revitalize old decks, and there are some new cards for Edric as well, but I'll talk about that in another video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.